Hey, y'all, it's executive producer Sonia Cho Swanson. And guess what? New season, new rules. Fall restrictions are in effect September through October. That means grass can only be watered 3 days a week. And yes, it's the law. Don't miss a beat. Change your watering clock now. Trees and plants, they need less water, just a recommended 2 days a week with drip irrigation. Visit snwa.com to find your assigned watering days and tips to maintain a healthy landscape. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency.
In August, Nevada officials confirmed our state government was the target of what seems to be a major cyber attack. We still haven't fully recovered from it, and I say seems to be major because the governor has been pretty tight-lipped about what actually happened and why. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we talk with Review Journal political reporter Jessica Hill and Channel 13 senior political reporter Steve Sebelius to help us understand what we know, what we don't, and what the F. It's Tuesday, September 23rd. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. You know, that first press conference about the cyber attack on Nevada's government computers was August 27th. But do we know when the attackers first made their way into the system, Jessica?
We do not. It was discovered on Sunday, as you said, but it could have been months or a year beforehand. We do not know.
Did you get any other information on that one, Steve?
No, all I've heard is that it was discovered that Sunday morning and that they took computers offline later that day in order to protect further data from being exported. But the date that it was discovered is not necessarily the date that the intrusion actually took place. And I think it's very difficult to know exactly how far it was because the governor has said this is part of the ongoing investigation. We can't tell exactly what we know because that investigation is still going on. The governor has said that no personal information of state residents was released and that no state banking information was released. So we know those two things were not there, but what was there, that's still an open question.
What was it definitive, Jessica, that no personal data? Because what I've heard so far has been very interestingly parsed language that, certain personal data wasn't released. Like they're being very specific of what wasn't released when it comes to personal data. Is it possible that there was personal data that still was breached?
Yes, I know the governor has said information from the DMV wasn't released. That can include driver's license information or just personal information from the DMV. And then, as Steve said, state financial records. But there's also like a very strict legal definition of what personal identifying information is. I believe it's someone's first name plus other kinds of information, such as someone's social security number.
Right.
So there's like a very specific legal definition that qualifies. And I believe that also includes, email passwords. So someone's, first name and their email password. So there's a lot of information that could be considered personal, but is not considered personal identifying information under the law that would require the state to, reach out to folks and, be subject to possible litigation.
Yeah, I'm not loving that we're a little bit in the dark and we're kind of parsing out legal definitions of stuff. I mean, this all together sounds pretty major. And yet, Governor Joe Lombardo wasn't there to do the whole sheriff governor daddy thing at the beginning saying, it's okay, I've got this under control, don't freak out. So why do you guys think that his absence has become such a big deal at that first press conference?
Well, because Democrats are running against him, and that gave him a good attack line. Let's be honest, just a couple of things. Number one, I'll say, had Lombardo been at that news conference, had he not taken the trip that he took and been there, I don't think anything technically in response to the crisis would have gone differently. It wouldn't have been any different if he was standing over the shoulder of the state's IT people, looking at what they were doing and personally supervising that whole thing. Having said that, though, David, you mentioned it. It was this situation where we need, the face of the response is the governor. He is the chief executive of the state, and people want to be reassured that somebody is on it. And of all people, he would know that because he has a master's degree in responding to crisis management. And
that's informal. He did that maybe online or just experience.
That's UNLV, and it's a master's degree, and he has it. And you could tell, if you didn't know that, you'd be able to tell from the news conference, because he was describing very particularly in technical details the phases of preparation and then the phases of response. And that came straight from that crisis management coursework. And so I think he realized, almost immediately that he had made a mistake by not being at that first press conference. And he has been at every subsequent press conference. But you will still hear the Republicans, or the Democrats rather, call him No-Show Joe from now until Election Day and blame him for not being there on the first day of that news conference.
I mean, we've seen these subsequent press conferences. He's there. He's a little strident, a little defensive about being accused of not, kind of being transparent. And he claims, look, we are super transparent. What grade would you give him on transparency on this particular cyber attack so far?
Maybe a C plus.
Well,
is that
you're
fair?
very generous. Yeah, you're the one that's covering this day to day. Where does he get the plus from?
I mean, it's hard because I do understand that there's like security concerns and they don't want to give too much away or, make sure that there aren't bad actors still in the system. From a reporter's perspective, it is frustrating not hearing every single day. Just like a quick press release would be great about where they're at. They do have that website that they say that updates twice a day, but I don't think it actually does. And I'll scroll through it and not see any changes when it does say that it's been updated. So it is frustrating, but I do understand that it could be difficult to, give information when they're not ready to give information. Just today I asked, when we'll find out what exact data was taken since data was taken. And I was told that we might not find out until after the investigation is done. And I don't know how long that will be. That could take months.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, maybe even a whole new life. So why not start that journey today? I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I'm learning Spanish with Babbel. Babbel's conversation-based technique quickly teaches you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. I've been practicing my Spanish with Babbel's AI conversation partner. I can choose my conversation topic and have a real-time dialogue. It's great at helping me think on my feet, and it's improving my pronunciation. Also, it's really easy to do anytime on my phone using Babbel's excellent mobile app. It's just one of the many fantastic Babbel tools for learning. Plus, Babbel has a real-time feedback, progress trackers, and handy visualizations, all of which make it really easy to stay motivated to learn. I want you to learn another language. So CityCast is teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
I mean, Steve, or shall I call you Professor Steve here? What grade are you giving on transparency for the cyber attack?
I would give him probably a slightly better grade. He is, I think, disclosed all the information that he feels like the state can disclose at this point, because, as they're going through this investigation, we don't fully know if the intruders have been completely locked out. But what we do know is if they came and revealed, we know they got in this way, and then they did this thing, and then they got over here, then that's a roadmap to whoever did it and whoever now wants to do it in the future to figure out how to get in again. A case in point, the state did an unannounced password reset across the entire enterprise, and everybody had to reset their password. They weren't told in advance it was going to happen. And when they did that, they received all sorts of attacks of people trying to get in again to the system to try to capture this data and do some nefarious acts. And so you have to balance the need for public information which of course we want everything. And we want to know every detail, how it happened, how much data was released, exactly what data was released. And they have to balance that against the investigation. So I think they're trying to do the best they can, but they do have to balance the need to do a successful prosecution. I mean, it's not like the FBI director and just blurting out, oh, yeah, we got the guy, when they in fact don't have the guy.
Right. But let's just, how much deference do we give the government that these are all state secrets and that there's an ongoing investigation? I mean, are they ever going to be held accountable if that's even true? We just defer? Do we just take their word and move on?
No, we don't. No, you never take their word. You always trust but verify. And I think we're going to keep asking the questions until we do get an answer. And as Jess said, it may take a long time to get those answers. It may take a long time to get to the end of this investigation. But I think you're going to see either officially or people kind of leaking what's going on, and the story will not go away.
Now, Jessica, I'm glad Steve mentioned the change-up of emails. You did some excellent reporting about the kerfuffle of resetting government employee emails without letting them know. So what was the full story with that, and where does it stand?
Yeah, I think a lot of the frustration that I heard from when talking with state employees about this wasn't so much like they understood, this is a security measure. And they understood that maybe it was difficult to tell all state employees about something in advance, through email that could, open up, problems for, bad actors who might still have access. But they were frustrated about how this took most of their day, if not longer. Some of them could not get back into their emails all day. It kind of cost the state to shut down again after already being shut down, multiple services being shut down for weeks.
So like a state-induced coma.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And people are just expressing frustration about the lack of communication. I don't know if there's a way that they could have done it just, by calling individually, managers calling state employees and just letting them know, like, hey, this is happening. But I think they were expressing frustration about the lack of communication and transparency on their end.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a complicated thing because I totally understand that they didn't want bad actors to, as Steve was mentioning, find out about this in advance and, try to get into the systems again. But at the same time, it doesn't look great when the systems have been shut down for weeks. And then as part of the recovery process, employees are not able to do their work. And a lot of things does depend on your state email.
Yeah. And let's not forget, it's not just an annoyance or a frustration from the state employees, but they send out emails to constituents, to other agencies outside of Nevada, et cetera, and all that gets shut down. So we're impacted by it. Did you hear back from the governor on your reporting, Jessica? Were they happy that you were reporting on that?
They were not. And they did bring it up in a press conference. They didn't, name me or name my story. I think I was one of the only outlets that reported on it. But they did just say it caused some headache because they had an increased report of, phishing schemes and phishing attacks or people trying to get into the systems. The governor's office didn't make that clear to me when I was writing the story. I think, if they had expressed those concerns, I would have talked it out with my editors and decided, what the best method was. But I think people were just feeling a lot of concern about the lack of transparency and like the continued, how long is this going to go on for, this like email lockout? Because I was hearing from a state employee union that workers were still out like all day and were hoping to get back up online the day after.
Yeah, I mean, this just seems like an outgrowth of the lack of transparency. I know we're pretty much, at least from both of your reporting, we're about 90% back online for government agencies and services. But what do we know about that 10% that's not back online?
One of them is I've heard from a few lawyers that cover workers' comp. They handle, injured workers' cases. Mm-hmm. They have an internal e-filing system that they just launched in July because they, for years, had a backlog that was, mostly brought on by COVID. But they had this e-filing system that would help kind of churn, faster cases out because of using, digital copies, digital files, and just going online. And then, less than a month later, that system was shut down because of the cyber attack, and it's still not back up. And they worry that injured workers' cases are going to just be delayed even longer. Injured workers won't be able to, get paid or get their medical expenses covered because of this.
Steve, have you heard anything else about what's still off?
Yeah, I know there was, at one point, the Brady background check system was down. That's now been restored. But I found that interesting because, during COVID, because of what had happened in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina, gun stores were considered to be essential services because going and buying a gun is a fundamental constitutional right. And so I find it really interesting that the gun background check system being down prevented the sale of firearms and thwarted this fundamental constitutional right for a number of days. So you could go and put the money down for the gun, but you couldn't receive the gun until the background check had been done, unless you had a concealed weapons permit. So, so I think that's interesting that even fundamental constitutional rights fall to the vagaries of a cyber attack.
Yeah. I mean, you added up on the costs. And speaking of costs, I mean, one question I've heard a few times of the governor is how much has this cost the state of Nevada? Have they given us any information about like the financial cost, the fiscal impact, or, the loss of these kind of things?
They have not. No, we did ask that question at a press conference, and the governor did say he doesn't have that information, but they have insurance to help cover this. I'm still trying to get a little bit more information about that myself.
Yeah, he did say that they have insurance and that he expects the insurance company to cooperate with them. I thought to myself when he said that, well, that would be the first time that's ever happened. So
yeah, I mean, he better go to one of those billboard lawyers to really shake down the insurance company that they're so known for doing, right?
Yeah, Knockface got to get them.
Yeah, right.
There's no shortage of them in our town. I mean, you can find any of them. But very often, though, you joke, but it does come down to that. It does come down to the insurance company doesn't want to pay.
Steve, you've been around for a long time, and that's not to say that you're old, you're storied. Congratulations, by the way, on your induction into the Nevada Press Association Hall of Fame, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
But the question I'm asking you, because of your, institutional knowledge here, and not your first cyber attack rodeo either, I want to ask you about how the government and the governor's approach, especially with the media, is. I mean, is this normal?
Well, I don't think we've ever had a cyber attack of this scope and breadth before. So this is actually new, even for me. And, as the state has come to increasingly rely on computers, we have heard for years, DMV computers are bad. They aren't doing what they're supposed to. During COVID, the unemployment system was overwhelmed. The healthcare system and the tracking for Medicare and all of those things. So this is actually a new situation. This is something that we've never seen before. And so I think the governor's response to it is also unique because he's trying to navigate something that, no other governor has had to navigate before, just like Cyberattack and a global pandemic. Brian Sandoval faced, flooding and fires. Those were precedented things, but these are real. This is really an unprecedented.
Let's not forget a recession too. That really hit
had
the
a little
state
bit
hard.
of a little bit of a recession that he had to navigate out of. But we've seen recessions before, right?
Yeah.
This level of cyber attack in the state of Nevada is unique. Now there are plenty of other states and localities that have experienced this, and some have been very costly. Data has been released, lawsuits have been filed. And so this goes on all the time. That's probably why the state has insurance, because of those other cases to protect us in the event that this is happening. But look, this security, I think when it all comes down to it, I think we're going to find that it was somebody who clicked on a phishing email, and that's how they got into the system. And that's how all of these things start. So your security is only as strong as the least informed, least well-trained employee in the organization. And I know at my organization, they try to trick you by sending phishing emails. And if you click on it, it'll say, oh, nope, you fell for a phishing email. Personally, I will say this.
Personally, if a Nigerian princess were to tell me that she loved me and I just need to send money, I would think about it.
Yeah,
but I
sure you
I
would,
know
of
this,
course.
and Steve, I know you're not going to, because it's not your style to grossly speculate unless you're kind of hearing some stuff. And I want to ask this to both of you. I mean, I know we don't have any official word on who did this, how they did this, or what, if anything, is being asked for as ransomware. But have either of you heard from your sources what is happening behind the scenes on these subjects?
I mean, I've heard speculation as to where this came from, but nothing, no hard definitive answer to like who did this. And when you hear ransomware attack, you think, okay, they're trying to grab your data and encrypt it and say, we'll delete it unless you pay us, or we're going to grab this data and we'll release it unless you pay us. And so far, we haven't heard that. We haven't heard how much they want, what data they got, what they're doing with it. Does the state still have access to it? Are they having to rebuild these databases? What's going on with all of that? So there's a lot of unanswered questions, which is part of the reason I said this is not going to go away.
Yeah.
Right.
Jessica,
and I've heard,
yeah,
I've just talked with like cybersecurity experts about like the possibilities of, what could have happened. And they were talking about how, you could do everything right, but you're constantly, having to defend yourself over years and years and years. And one of these days, someone's going to find a hole and get in there. And it just takes one out of, 10,000 employees to click on something. The experts that I've been talking to have basically been saying, it's sometimes inevitable that some of these attacks could happen. And state experts have said, or state officials have said, that it was a sophisticated ransomware attack. Experts
have we heard? I'm sorry, Jessica, but have we heard like maybe where it's coming from? Is it some kid on a couch playing games in the interim moments? Is it a foreign government? Is it one of our natural enemies like Nashville? I mean, what have we heard?
Right.
Sorry, Nashville.
It's likely not a kid, wearing a hoodie in his basement, performing this. Some experts that I've talked to have said some of these companies that are behind it are actually pretty sophisticated. They have hundreds of employees that are working on things like this for months. So it's like a pretty well-built and well-structured company that could be doing it. It could be, an actor, a bad, foreign state. But again, we just don't know. And the state has not, wanted to speculate on that.
Yeah. So assessing what we do and we don't officially know from the government, what sort of worst case scenarios of impact on the citizens of Nevada still remain?
Well, I mean, like Jessica said earlier, they are parsing that definition of personal information. But whenever they say no personal information has been released, they always follow up by saying, that's what we know right now.
So far, yeah.
And if that were to change, we will notify people in accordance with the law that we have to do that. So my thinking of the worst case scenario is that personal information from the DMV, from voter databases, from healthcare databases, that information has been exported and that could be used against people for impersonation and personal information, used to open credit cards and all the other kind of things. So that would probably be the worst case scenario. The citizens' personal information being used against them and financial harm coming to them as a result of that.
I agree. And I think, you could start to see more spam calls. That's not like a worst case scenario, but if, personal information was taken, such as someone's phone number, people might start to see an increase in that. But again, we just don't know what kind of, effect this will have. And I guess we'll just, have to wait and see.
Well, I hate ending on a dour note. Is there a best case scenario?
Best case scenario is, no personal information was taken. I don't really know what kind of data that would be that an actor would want to take for their own gain. That's not, influential or important, but, maybe it was like some old, property records from the 1970s that was taken. Maybe it was that. And the systems will come back online and everything is all good. All rainbows and sunshine.
And we didn't have to pay a lot of money. Because this ransomware still kind of sticks in my craw as being like, how much are they talking about? And also, like, how much does it cost to rebuild it? What do you think, Steve?
Well, I was going to say the best case scenario would be an increased awareness among state employees to watch out for cyber intrusion and to realize how innocuous an email can look that could have these long-term consequences. And so we all, listen to the IT guys when they come and they say, oh, we got to have more security and all that.
Yeah.
But nobody really pays attention. They want the IT guys to come fix their computer so they can get on and do their work. But it is really serious, and it could have really serious consequences. So having an increased awareness among state employees and really everybody, all of us, to know that there are bad actors out there. They have ill intent and they want to do harm for whatever reason, monetary gain or just to disrupt things. And so to be on alert for that, I think is a good scenario.
Yeah, because it never really is rainbows. I mean, there's no Robin Hood who's going into the public funds for the Raiders Stadium and the A's and redistributing it to, us poor people's.
Well, David, I mean, of all the states in the country, if you were trying to cyber attack a state to achieve monetary gain, Nevada is probably the worst state in the country to come and attack to achieve monetary gain. You should go to a state like New York or Pennsylvania or California that actually has money.
Yeah, although they also do hit the casinos. They do hit the casinos, and that seems to be paying off for them as well.
That is true. That is true.
I don't think we have a ransomware fund in our budget to, pay for.
Although I keep hearing we have this rainy day fund.
We do have the rainy day fund. Is that in the definition?
Well, hopefully this isn't cyber rain. Jessica and Steve, I really appreciate your reporting on this and your continued reporting on this. Thank you for joining us on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to be here, David.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend. You could also rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And don't forget, you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky. Can you hear me? I'm getting no laughs from you, dude.
I can hear
stoic.
you.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.